Today on Locked On Canadiens, why on earth would the Montreal Canadiens be interested in Nic Hague? We'll get into that on today's episode.
You are Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into episode 1326 of Locked On Canadiens. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Every day here at Locked On Canadiens, we are your show every day, free and available everywhere you get your podcast. Please be sure to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast to ensure you get every episode directly fed into your emotional support rectangle, also known as your cell phone. My name is Ian Boisvert, also known as @MaybeIt'sIan, and I am joined at the end of this lovely weekend by the incomparable Laura Saba, the actor Stick. Laura, how are we feeling heading into another week for the Montreal Canadiens? The Stanley Cup could be won this week, which means pretty much after that, silly season will be upon us and things will be starting to be traded left and right. It's kind of exciting, right?
Well, we're already in silly season on this episode because it seems like every time we say, oh, it's rumor roundup for this week, there's a whole other rumor that we have to attack. And so I honestly, like, these are exciting times. I feel like the Canadiens are just, they can be tied to anything because there's so much that they could do this summer. The possibilities are just so tantalizing.
Yep, totally agreed. So rumor roundup is back. The hat is just to my stage right here. We will be revisiting, or not revisiting the hat, but visiting a rumor for the first time that developed over the last few days, involving one Nic Hague and the Vegas Golden Knights. We have to talk about Marty St. The Jack Adams Award voting dropped, and he is third among the three finalists. We'll kind of figure out what goes into that voting process, where Marty can go from here. And I want to talk about whether or not we think the Jack Adams curse is real, and if Montreal dodged a tremendous bullet by not having Marty win that trophy. And then it is Alex Newhook season review day. A very interesting player, a very interesting season that he had, and trying to determine his role moving forward, I think is going to be a very illuminating discussion about what we think the Canadiens will be headed towards in the years to come. But let's start with Jack Adams award voting. It was released over the weekend. Spencer Carberry out in Washington, Montreal's first round opponent, ends up taking that trophy. Marty comes in third behind Scott Arniel in Winnipeg. He gets 2 first place votes. This is voted on by the Broadcasters Association, so the ballots aren't made public in the same way that a lot of the votes, or that all of the ones that the Hockey Writers Association votes on. What are your thoughts, seeing that he grabs 2 first place votes, he finishes third? Was that about what you kind of expected?
Yes, very much so. I thought that it would be a massive disservice to him if he wasn't in the conversation. The fact that he was a finalist, I think, was very much appropriate. I think appropriate is a good word for that. But at the same time, I do think that the players had a lot with what happened this particular season. So if they're rewarding people just for making the playoffs, then I think, Marty wouldn't be at the top of that list for me. Just because we know that he's a good coach. We know that his career arc is going to go nowhere but up from here, right? The way that he's carried himself over the amount of time that he's been with the Canadiens. And I think, bad team makes playoffs is such a terrible formula for choosing the top coach of the year. And the other thing is, like, it's either bad team makes playoffs or it's team with best goaltender. And, and Spencer Carberry was not those things. And he was the one that ended up winning out. Whereas, like, the argument could be made for the other two that one was the coach with the best goaltender in the regular season. The other one was bad team made playoffs. So I really think that Martin St. Louis should get recognition. He should get noticed. He should get his flowers. But we can't forget that this was a massive learning curve for him too. Like, early in the season, we were getting very frustrated with some of his decisions. We were questioning it a lot. We weren't calling for his head, but we were questioning some of the decisions he was making up until, I would say, around the time of maybe Christmas, when things started getting better on this team and they went on that run that was so exciting for us. I really think that, I would say it's not quite there yet. So for him not to win, I think, is appropriate because he's not quite there yet. If we're objectively talking about the best coach this season in the NHL and not just some sort of, arbitrary / political / lazy type voting that often does happen with NHL awards.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think Marty he had already endeared himself to that locker room and to that front office. I mean, they were enamored with him before he was coaching in Montreal. It was just the second they had a chance to bring in a new coach, it was, we have to get Marty over here. That's not new. What I think is new is he's getting more public appreciation for what he's been building in Montreal. He's not solely responsible for it. I think you said it best. It's the players. The players got them to the playoffs. Marty is a big part of that, no question. But the players got them there. Why do you think? I don't mean to get inside the mind of these guys, of the people voting for this, but what is it about Marty that caused two of these voters to vote for him as the best coach of the year? There were two people who said he's worth my first place vote.
They've heard him talk and they know how he thinks hockey, right?
Yeah.
It's undeniable that he has a view and a vision within hockey that is, I wouldn't say unique, but I would say is definitely special. I would say it's definitely elevated, right? He lives and breathes hockey just like a lot of these guys. And I think the way that he sees the game is maybe a little bit different than what people are used to. It's not the same old, same old. He's very clear with his intentions, and there's a little bit of exposure to the way that he treats his players. And,
Yeah.
whether you're seeing clips from practice, whether you're seeing the behind the scenes on the rebuild, whether you're just seeing, just the way he talks to or about his players, you can tell the way that he thinks hockey is a little bit different. It's a little bit fresher. It's also like very, very intense, right? He's very deeply ingrained in it. And one thing I will say is that, we just said, yes, it was the players that got them there. And I think Marty would be the first person to tell you that if he were to win, right, he would be like, well, actually, these are my guys that did this, right? Like,
Yeah.
Mega, like he keeps talking about Mega, right? Like, he loves this team. And the reason is that they've bought into this together, right? Yes, he's selling the vision. Yes, he's helping them get better day by day. But I think the way that he treats his players and the way that he talks about the game is what they probably took notice of, these broadcasters that voted on it.
Yeah. And I think, you mentioned he wants the guys to play for each other. He's explicitly said that, because a lot of the players are saying they want to play for Marty.
And he's like, oh.
Marty doesn't want that. He wants them unified and playing for each other. I guess in a sense, if they're all playing for Marty, then they are all kind of playing for each other, which is good. Like, these are good problems to have. I look at, like Pete DeBoer was fired over the weekend for his, essentially, people would say because he couldn't get the job done in the conference final. He was fired because he threw his goalie under the bus after he had a great playoff run. He had one bad game and the goalie threw him under the bus. I could never see Marty doing something like that. That's just at this point in his career, or it just doesn't really feel like that's his style. The last part I want to touch on here is the curse of the Jack Adams, and why Montreal might have dodged a bullet. This is from Daily Faceoff back in 2024. They pulled some numbers about the Jack Adams. 42 of the 49 Jack Adams winners, a whopping 85.7%, saw a decline in their team's points percentage the very next year. So the vast majority of these teams get worse the following year. 24 of 49, or 49%, of these coaches were fired from these positions within 3 or fewer seasons of winning the Jack Adams, and 14 or 28% lasted no more than 2 seasons. So more than a quarter of all Coach of the Year winners have been pink slipped within 2 years of winning that award. Does this award it has always been worst roster, best result? Does this award sort of set these coaches up for failure, and that, well, you did it that one year, you have to be able to repeat that every time now?
Right.
It's setting them up for failure, no?
I think so, because again, that's the philosophy behind it, right? Like, worst team, best outcome. That team is not going to get that much better over the course of the next couple of years, right?
No.
Like, there's not going to be dramatic changes, particularly for some of these teams, right? Those rosters are set for a few years, especially if they're not in a rebuild or a retool or whatever it is. So I think a lot of the times it's just the nature of how the voting works for this award that curses them. It's less the award itself. It's more, like, there needs to be some sort of acknowledgement that this is how people go. It's like, what you've done the most with the least. Right? That least is not dramatically getting better next season or the 3 seasons after that. And sometimes it actively gets worse, right? Like a key player will leave, or a goaltender will come back down to earth, or something like that, right? Like some guy doesn't have a career year and then you get fired.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, and we'll wrap on this. When you mentioned, a lot of times it's just having a great goalie. Look at Paul Maurice in the Stanley Cup final for the third year in a row with the Florida Panthers. He has never had a goalie like Sergei Bobrovsky, and boy, would he have loved to have had one in the past. He is the losingest a coach in NHL history. No coach has more regular season losses than Paul Maurice, and yet who cares? Because now he's got this goalie. You show me a good coach, I'll show you a good goalie. All right, we'll leave the Jack Adams there. When we come back, I'm going to be wearing a different hat. We're going to talk about a new trade rumor involving the Montreal Canadiens and one defenseman named Nic Hague, and we'll get into that in just a minute here on Locked On Canadiens. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's really easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. I started using Monarch Money to get a better grasp on my spending. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Spoiler alert, it was a lot. Now I budget smarter and I save more. Instead of juggling multiple apps, from credit card apps to banking apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing your money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. All right, we're back. Trying to figure out which way to put this hat on. These quick changes are getting worse, Laura. All right, we have a trade rumor here on Locked On Canadiens with our rumor roundup segment. We are headed to the Toronto Star, where one Nick Kypreos threw in this nugget at the very end of a column. I'll read it in full since it is free and available anywhere. There aren't many quality UFA defensemen out there, so that makes Nic Hague of the Golden Knights, I guess it's Nicholas Hague of the Golden Knights, a very attractive trade chip if and when Vegas decides to move him because of limited salary cap space. I'm hearing the Montreal Canadiens and Pittsburgh Penguins are hot on the trail to potentially trade for him. Nic Hague this season played 68 games, 5 goals, 7 assists, 12 points, a -2 with the Vegas Golden Knights. He played, I believe, in all of their playoff games as well. He's a left shot defenseman, Laura, and that sort of is where this rumor becomes kind of confusing, because that is something the Canadiens don't really seem to need, right?
Absolutely. And so I was wondering too why the Canadians would be interested in this player unless they're moving somebody. But even if they are moving somebody, they've got enough left shot defensemen in the pipeline. They've got guys. Yeah. They've got guys.
Yeah, they have tons of guys. I don't get why. I guess we'll have to figure this out, because I think it makes a lot of sense for Montreal if they're deciding to move on from somebody on the left side of their blue line. I think one of those guys, I wonder if this is a Jaden Struble replacement. And the reason I'm headed in this direction is he's a left shot defenseman, around the same size, I believe. Jaden Struble is 6 foot. Actually, he's way bigger. Nic Hague is 6'6". He's way bigger than Jaden Struble. Jaden Struble does not play any of the special teams for the Canadiens. I think Nic Hague could come in and be a penalty killer, which is something that Montreal would need, especially with David Savard
being gone.
Exactly. That's that replacement. Both of them are restricted free agents, both Struble and Hague, with arbitration rights, which for both those teams could get kind of messy. And I sort of wonder if, Kypreos mentions in his column that the Vegas Golden Knights are going to need to try to cut salary. He's a free agent, so it's not really cutting salary, but potentially they can get a cheaper option than what Nic Hague was the previous year. So he's a free agent now, but his last cap hit was
about
$2.3 million. Maybe they're thinking that Jaden Struble will come in underneath that, and that would make sense for them. Like, I think Montreal would be willing to upgrade on a guy like Jaden Struble should they be able to.
Yes.
Now, is Nick Hague an upgrade on Jaden Struble? I'm not convinced. He's bigger, so check there. He's huge. That's great. We love to see that. He also had the worst expected goals for percentage among Golden Knights defensemen. That's not good. That's
not promising.
No. And I mean, it's one thing, we talked about Alex Carrier and how none of his numbers were all that promising, but he was playing for the terrible, very bad, no good Nashville Predators. Hague was playing on a very good Vegas team. His numbers should be better.
Yes.
He was rocking let me make sure I have this right, a 44.8 on ice expected goals for percentage at 5 on, or in all situations. So maybe it's because he's a penalty killer that evens out in that respect, but that's not all that convincing to me.
I'm not enamored is where I'm at with this. Just because, and here's the thing, it's like, we really want to caution against the Montreal Canadiens got pushed around in the first round, and so they want guys that are bigger, right?
Yeah.
You don't need guys that are bigger, you need guys that play tough. And it's two different things. Just because a player might be small does not mean that they can't play tough. Alex Carrier is not very large. He was one of the people that was playing the toughest against the Washington Capitals, right? So I think that we want to caution against that. But I do think that the Montreal Canadiens are in need of a replacement for David Savard. That is their need right now, not a replacement for Jaden Struble. So how they make that work, I do think that it might be that this is something where we will offer you this cheaper player and we will get a person who can play the penalty kill. But either way, they have to fill that hole. And maybe they just don't see what they want to see in Laval just yet.
Yeah, I mean, who coming up from Laval could do what David Savard was doing this year? It's not Engstrom. As much as we like Engstrom, that is not the prototype of player you'd be getting there. Could Reinbacher come in and play on the penalty kill? Maybe, but you really can't bank on it. You wouldn't want to throw him into the deep end immediately. Logan Mayhew's probably a hard no. Just watching him
on
defend in general.
No.
On the penalty kill, no. He would be a second wave power play guy if you brought him up, and they don't really need that. I really do think that this might be Montreal just saying, look, Jaden Struble is probably not going to play here. I wonder if that works out, and if Vegas goes, we can sign this guy for $1.5 million for the next couple of years, and Montreal has to throw something like 3 at Nic Hague in order to get that to work. I wonder how much of that makes sense for the Canadiens' plans. It seems like, just by going from the wording that Kyprios used here, I'm hearing the Montreal Canadiens and Pittsburgh Penguins are hot on the trail to potentially trade for him. It seems like there's not necessarily a vibrant market for this player, but that there's these teams are fighting each other to get him as soon as possible is what it kind of sounds like.
There's also the Philadelphia Flyers that are interested. I can't remember who reported that, but it was another source that reported that the Flyers were interested in Nick Hague.
Ooh, then him going to either one of those teams is funny because then the other one will be huge mad about it.
Exactly.
I think that's the
really,
best.
really funny.
Yeah, I want this to just be both of those guys mad at each other, and maybe Nick Hague comes into Montreal and he fills that role. But looking at David Savard, when we had a player who filled that role, nobody really liked him. Nobody was a big fan of the way David Savard was playing in Montreal. I know it was towards the end of his time, and
it was age.
It was age 1,000%, but also at the beginning of his tenure in Montreal, it just wasn't it didn't really seem like much of a fit at the time. And maybe Montreal is saying, well, maybe we have a better option here. We have a younger option, a bigger option in
one that we can make fit.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's do the yeehaws for this one. Realism. I don't know where I go with this one because I think the argument I came up with kind of makes some sense, but I still think it's lower on the scale.
Yeah, I wouldn't go higher than a 2 on the realism.
Yeah, I was going to say 1 or 2. I think that's probably right. Yeehaws for entertainment. I don't feel that this one's going to be much different.
None. I'm not entertained by this at all.
Yeah, we were, before the show, we were looking at sort of his history in playing the Canadiens because he was on that Knights team that lost to Montreal in the Stanley Cup semifinal in which the Canadiens won the Western Conference Trophy. Still one of the funniest things that's ever happened. And he played, the only game he played in was the deciding game where Artturi Lehkonen scored in overtime and the Canadiens went to the Cup final. He was a -1 in that game. So there's not much of a history there of him like playing in Montreal and doing particularly well. So it'll be interesting to see where this runs out. If Nick Hague is the big hot defenseman on the market, I'm a little worried about what the market for defensemen is going to look like this year. And Montreal might just be better off saying, we're just going to play Reinbacher and maybe bring up Engstrom, and that's going to be it for our summer on D. We're not doing anything else. Yeah, right? Like, I mean, if this is the guy that everyone's falling over themselves for, we're in trouble. Like, it's not going to be a good summer for defensemen.
Yeah.
All right. We will leave our trade rumors there. I'm sure as the week continues, you will see this hat more. It seems like every day something new comes out about some player the Canadiens might or might not be interested in. So you'll be seeing this more and more. All right, when we come back, we have a season review for one Alex Newhook. We'll figure out the year that he had and his role on the Montreal Canadiens when we come back. All right, quick change is better that time. That one we nailed. All right, we're back. We are doing our season review for one Alex Newhook. Let's start with our word on this one, Laura. Do you have a word to describe the season that Alex Newhook had?
Yes, underappreciated.
Interesting. Elaborate a little bit, because I think I went in a different direction.
Okay, so I think that obviously Alex Newhook had to do some things that Alex Newhook's talent is not up to, right?
Right.
I think it's fair to explain that. I think he performed admirably on that front, but I felt that so many people were crapping on him night in and night out. Sometimes he would be the only guy able to take the puck out of the zone or to skate the puck into the zone, right? His zone entries are phenomenal. A lot of times he would be setting things up that didn't work, but then it would be Alex Newhook's fault, right? Like that some guy didn't shoot the puck into the, So I feel like if he were a little bit taller, there would be a little bit more patience for him because, I mean, he's fast, he's smart, he's playing a role that he is not suited to play. And it's nothing against Alex Newhook. Like there is a ceiling that Alex Newhook has, and he's been asked to play 2 floors above that. So I felt that he was underappreciated based on how maligned he was. But at the same time, if you're going to ask me if this is his best season, I'm not so sure about that.
Yeah, it's so funny. We just did this with Mike Matheson, did we not? About a guy who's just playing too far above his head. He's being asked to do too much. He's being asked to play a role he can't play. And the result was admirable, but maybe not what we would have wanted.
Exactly.
I think the word I have for Alex Newhook is undecided, because I am undecided what this guy's role is going to be next year. The last 2 seasons, so the beginning of the season and the season prior, we looked at Alex Newhook's preseason deployment, what line he was going to be on. And we were like, man, this guy's going to cook on that line. He's going to play with, last year it was Slavkovsky and Doc. That's going to rule. Awesome. Love to see that. That obviously fell apart instantly with Doc getting hurt. This season he comes in and he's going to play next to Doc and Laine. And we go, ooh, that's going to be fun. Like that line is going to cook. And then that fell apart and we didn't really see it. I think what's happened is he's kind of developed. We're kind of understanding that he's not a top 6 forward. I don't think that's his role. The problem is the Montreal Canadiens have a lot of bottom 6 wingers, and they have more on the way up. Yeah. Beck is probably going to crack into the NHL as a winger, as is Florian Jacki at some point. That leaves him to try to be that third line center should they not bring back Dvorak or a Dvorak replacement. He was 42.8% at the faceoff this year, Laura. Like I have a really hard. Go ahead.
His defensive abilities are not up to a third line center role.
Yes, and Marty really wants him to use his speed defensively. He uses it offensively, no problem. We see him fly with the puck. I find that the second power play unit is oftentimes more effective at getting the zone because they just give it to Nui and he skates in the zone and something gets created out of that. But I don't know that that's enough. I don't know that that is a very one-dimensional player. And I sort of find myself trying to understand what value the Canadiens saw in him when they traded a first-round pick for him, because that's what they did. They traded a first and a second to get this player from Colorado. He had 15 goals, 11 assists for 34 points in 82 games this year. He dropped 8 points from the previous season, and in the previous season, he only played 55 games. He played a full season this year. So the offensive output was gone. It was just gone. And I mean, a lot of that's because the talent on that line just wasn't there. He really struggled to generate anything with whatever who he was playing with. So he gets second power play work, but he doesn't get any penalty kill work. If he's your third line center, unless you're putting Nick Suzuki back on the penalty kill full time, he has to do some penalty kill work, no?
Yeah, and I don't trust that that's going to happen.
Yeah, I think that's why I said I was undecided with him, because I just don't know. You know, a lot of times with these season reviews, we're trying to find a long-term outlook for this player, and I'm having a really hard time finding a spot for Alex Newhook on this team. Because if he's a third line player, well, Montreal's got those in spades. Like, do we need to have this, undersized player playing on a role on a line in a role that's supposed to be very physical?
That's exactly it. So like when we look back to when they take these swings at the fences, right? I don't even know if this was a major swing or not, but you can agree that the moment that they traded for Kirby Dach was because the Canadiens needed a second line center, right?
Yep.
When they got Emil Heineman for Tyler Toffoli, it was because they felt that this guy was going to be able to think the game in the way that they wanted to, they wanted the game to be thought, right? Like a Marty type player, a Kent Hughes type player, a Jeff Gordon type player, right? When they got Alex Newhook, I don't know what the reason was.
Yeah, and I remember going, because it happened right before the draft, right?
Yeah.
I remember they were asking, Marty and I think the front office, where's this guy going to play? Is he going to play center? Is he going to play wing? And if I remember correctly, Marty was very much like, we think he's going to be a center, and he very is not.
Yeah.
And if that was the main, fulcrum of why you moved for this guy, it's kind of challenging to see any way where this works, right? Like it's difficult to see that this works for this team. I know we're usually very positive in these reviews, especially after a season that we just saw, but like just long-term impact, I'm having a really difficult time placing this player on this team, and it's for all these reasons. He's undersized, he's pretty one-dimensional, the offense isn't there, and the defense isn't there, at least to the levels where you would need it to be, right?
Right, absolutely. So I think the one thing about this Canadiens team is that it doesn't matter how much they've sunk into a player. If it's not going to work, they are going to, I don't want to say get rid of him because that's mean, but they're going to regroup, right? They move him down the lineup or they trade him, whatever happens. Like if it's not going to work out, they're not going to be married to it. They're going to pivot. Not as quickly as a Vegas would pivot, but they're going to pivot.
Vegas would have traded him a year ago. Like that, there would be we wouldn't be having an Alex Newhook season 2 season review. That wouldn't be happening. They would have dealt that guy a while ago. And look, like the contract isn't prohibitive. As much as I thought at the time that what they gave up for him was too much, he's making 2.9 this season and next, and then he's still an RFA with arbitration rights after that. So it's not like he's breaking the bank for you. It's just I don't know what this guy is.
Yeah, it's a tradable contract.
Yeah, definitely. For a team that maybe needs a little bit of speed on the wing in their bottom six, for sure.
Yeah.
But it's going to, like so many guys on this team, it's going to be a big year for him next year to cement a role for himself. Because to this point, and a lot of it's the injuries that happened around him, but to this point, he hasn't been able to do that. We don't know if he's an energy line winger. We don't know if he's a center in the bottom six. We don't know. So there's a lot of information still to be learned about Alex Newhook. All right, let's leave Alex Newhook there and head into our trivia from last week. One of the stats we tracked during the season this year was Brendan Gallagher's goals in losses milestone, which is a very tongue-in-cheek way to point out that he played on a lot of bad teams, but he was one of the best players on those bad teams. This season, he passed Maurice Richard for the most goals in a loss by Montreal Canadiens, and he sits at the top of that list with 81 goals. However, there are 7 Montreal Canadiens who had more points all-time in losses. Who is at the top of this list? Do you have the answer to this, Laura?
Yes, it is Saku Koivu.
It is 191 points in losses all time for the Montreal Canadiens, puts Saku Koivu at the top. Secret Agent Man on YouTube had the answer correct, so congratulations. If I can, I would like to just read through the top 7 or top 8, with Gallagher being at the bottom of this list. So Gallagher is at the bottom of this with 150, Mats Naslund at 151, Jean Beliveau at 159, Guy Lafleur at 161, Nick Suzuki at 164. Hilarious. Andre Markov. Yeah, it's so funny. Andre Markov 174, Thomas Plekanec 178, Saku Koivu 191. So I just thought it was also very funny that Nick Suzuki is in the top 5 of points in losses all time by Montreal Canadiens. It's very funny.
I feel like we had some lean years, but also we've just had some really lean years.
Yeah, for sure. Those are the fact that I saw most of these guys play hockey is not great.
It's not great, but also Nick Suzuki had a COVID shortened season. I think 2 COVID shortened seasons technically.
Yeah, they just lost a lot of hockey games, and he was a big part of all those losses. All right, today's question. On April 7th, 2012, this enforcer scored the last goal of the year for the Montreal Canadiens, his only goal as a Montreal Canadien. It was an empty netter to beat the Toronto Maple Leafs in the season finale. Who scored this goal? April 7th, 2012, an enforcer. He scored his first and only goal as a Montreal Canadien. It's also his last goal as a Montreal Canadien because that was it. That was his last time playing in Montreal. If you have the answer to this question, put it in the comments down below or send it to us any way you know how, and we'll give you a shout out on the next episode of the show. And that's going to do it for us today on this Monday episode of Locked On Canadiens. Thank you so much for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. Every day, we are available everywhere you get your podcasts, 5 episodes a week for most of the summer, and then we'll tune back to 3 and then right back up to 5 when training camp kicks off. For your second listen, go check out the new Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Not a lot of chances left to getting on that one, so go check it out. We're also available on Amazon Fire TV, on your free Fire TV channels app. Click the Montreal Canadiens logo in the hockey section, and you can watch all of our episodes there as well. We are Locked On Canadiens wherever we are posting things. Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok. Come hang out with us. We like to talk with all of our friends and listeners there. You can find me at Maybe It's Ian. You can find Laura at The Active Stick. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you guys tomorrow.